Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, look, if you are new here, if you are new to the channel, my name is Carlos. We ain't gonna take too long with this intro, but I want to give you a proper introduction of me. All right, chill. Okay, why Chicago has so many gang wars? Why? Why does Chicago have so many gang wars? I wonder the same thing. Like, why? What is it about Chicago? Why everyone out there is backdooring each other, unaliving each other, and just going straight crazy out there? Why? We're gonna find out, I guess, in this video, or learn a little bit about it. If you are new here, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. And for the people that already are subscribed to me, I really appreciate y'all. I really do. Shit. My neck is starting to hurt seeing watching these videos. But yeah, we're going to do this reaction. Give it a pre-thumbs up. Check out Trap University. The original video will be tagged below down in the description. Let's do it.
It may seem obvious now, but the most dangerous age group in Chicago is under 21. When I was a kid, I grew up on stories that how the older guys in the street used to make sure the kids were in the house before the streetlights came on.
Facts.
20 years ago, there was a such thing as staying in a child's place. But you try to put one of these kids in their place today, they'll kill you. And honestly,
they'll kill you, bro. Dead ass. They got kids 12, 13 years old running around out here with pistols, bro. They're running around with guns now.
It wasn't much different in my era in the last decade. Now we all know what the projects are. Every major city had them at some point, and in some places like New York, they are still just as much of a thing as they were 30 years ago. But the most famous gang wars you heard about in Chicago only took place because the city has no more projects. I don't know if you want to count O Block as a project complex, but the projects were typically very tall buildings, where this is more of a co-op. Anyway, all of the real project buildings have been gone for about 20 years, and this demolition led to guys who would be friends and even guys who were unknowingly related to each other becoming enemies in the street. And that's only for the guys born in the 90s and the early 2000s, because anyone born 2005 and after never had a chance because the buildings were already gone. You have entire hoods at war, but their parents grew up down the hallway from each other. But the kids don't know that. If you're from the South Side especially, you know what I mean when I say that I've met so many people my age only to find out that my mom or my uncle or my dad grew up with one of their family members in the projects. For instance, one of my homies from high school kicked it with the man all through high school, all 4 years. We dodged bullets together. We did something stupid and got locked up together when we were 18. This was my dog. One day, my mom went to the funeral of one of her friends from the projects, but when she got there, she saw my homie sitting in the church, and she said, "Hey, what you doing here?" And he said, "This is my grandfather's funeral." And we just never knew that our families knew each other. And when I was still a stoner back in the day, my next door neighbor was the plug. This still my homie to this day, but turns out his mom and my aunt were best friends, and we didn't even know. But that's because the projects were on their way out when we were kids. But during our parents' childhood, the projects were full. And these were massive buildings. Today, you have multiple neighborhoods in Chicago that all descended from one building. But here's where it stops being fun. You know how hard-headed teenagers are. And unfortunately, once the buildings went down, these families moved into neighborhoods that already had families. Some kids from the projects were good kids, went on to make something of themselves. And some of them were bad. So when these bad kids moved into new neighborhoods, the kids already there had a little friction with them. There was still some organization in gangs in the early 2000s when this happened. Gang members were still jumping people in like they do in LA, and you still had to know
do
your
they even be
literature.
doing that still nowadays? Because I remember back when I was like younger, right, like 16, 15, I was around gangs. You know, I never got like initially jumped into like any gangs or wanted to be involved in that, because to this day, like, there's a lot of northerners and southerners where I live, right? Like norteños. And a lot of my homies that I grew up with were northerners, right? A lot of them are in jail, dead. Yeah, that's all I could really say. In jail or dead. And when they go to jail, like, say you get older and you mature, right? You're older now. You matured. If you end up doing something that where you go back to jail and you're like 30, you're going to go to jail and you have to go ride with the people that you're in the gang with. If you're associated or affiliated with like the northerners, when you go to jail, they put you with them and they're going to expect you to put in work. You got to put in work for them. And if you don't do it, guess what? They're gonna beat your ass. You get lucky if they don't kill you. You know, it's called a removal. And you turn into a DO, which is a dropout gang member. And once you turn into one of those, right? Say you go back out into the streets, anytime any of them see you, it's always gonna be a problem for you. Always. That's how gangs work. At least here in California with the Northerners and the Southerners. Like when you become a dropout, no one messes with you. Like your street credibility, or basically everyone that you grew up with that's involved with the gang, they're not gonna mess with you when they see you. A lot of the time, no one really does nothing, but it does create problems for you with where you can and can't go, what neighborhoods you can pull up to, and and that it gets to a point to where if you do become a dropout, it really shouldn't even matter to you if you're grown and matured and you want to start doing better and you're making bread, you're making money. Who cares? Who cares what anyone thinks? But yeah, that's how gangs work. You get involved, you get in trouble, you go to jail when you're like later in your years in life. This is just like I'm just trying to paint a picture for you guys. Hopefully no one does end up going to jail. But when you go to jail, they're going to make you do these things that you don't want to do. Stabbing people, just beating people up, fighting, and just like, I'm too old, I don't want to do that. Well, guess what? We're going to beat your ass in and you're going to be a dropout. That's just how it works.
Foreign to my generation and everyone after. But because of this organization, the guys coming in from the projects got together and tried to bully their way to doing what they wanted on the block. If that meant robbing some of the guys that were already living there or taking their girlfriends, that's what happened. And this is how a lot of wars started. So where you used to have an entire building on the same page, united, you now had neighbors at war with each other because the guys who already lived in these neighborhoods, their parents owned houses here, their grandparents owned houses here. Then all of a sudden, families come in 50 deep and try to overrun them. So in their eyes, y'all gotta go. But the guys that just came from the projects were not gonna go without a fight. Remember, they just came from the projects, a real grimy situation. The corruption in these buildings ran deep, from police officers helping facilitate the drug trade while taking their cut of money from the drug trade, to assassinations coming from snipers posted on rooftops and in the windows.
What? Hold on, bro. They really out there purging like that? They out there purging, bro. Let's go back a little bit. He's talking about snipers.
From the drug trade to assassinations coming from snipers posted on rooftops and in the windows. This was not the type of gangbanging that we see today. These were mafias. So it didn't take long for blood to shed when they moved to a new neighborhood. And that's just how it was. You had black families that were above the poverty line, both mom and dad in the house coexisting in their neighborhoods. But then all of a sudden, you have guys whose parents were either dead or on drugs due to how things went in the projects. You got people coming out of there that have been fending for themselves since they were little with something to prove moving into these areas. And like I said before, it wasn't all of them. I have a huge family that came from the projects, and most of them were not gang members. We got multiple college degrees in my family coming out of the projects, including my mom and her sisters. One helped build schools on the south side, and the other one managed to get her master's degree. And my uncle was a medic in the Navy. But it only takes a small group of people doing bad to change the whole area. Look at these two pictures. If you're not familiar with the early drill rap scene that was intertwined with the gang wars happening between 2012 and 2018, then you may be wondering who these little boys on the screen are. On the left here is L.A. Capone, a guy that would have been as famous as King Von in hip-hop had he not died at 17. And on the right here is Tuka. Tuka, if you need me to explain, is a 15-year-old kid that was killed at a bus stop in 2011. And he would end up being disrespected all over the world because Chief Keef and everyone associated with L.A. Capone would disrespect him, and his name is where smoking on someone to disrespect the dead came from. If you notice, this kid is in pictures with both of them. It might not seem significant, but both L.A. and Tuka are dead, and their friends have killed each other over the disrespect of their memories. That is
insane,
Now, it's kind of unclear who this kid is, but he could likely have family ties to both of them. Tuka also has a friend named FBG Butter, who you might have seen on his press run doing interviews before he went back to jail. And his mother and L.A.'s mother were so close that as babies, these two sat next to each other in their car seats.
My mama said I can't speak on L.A.
They knew each other. Used to sit side by side in their car seats.
Mama Capone talks about L.A. Capone fight with the FBG Butter. Damn.
They grew up and they didn't even know each other.
Only for them to grow up as rivals while their friends killed each other. Butter was even shot by King.
So they're really sitting in car seats as babies next to each other. And then this happens. Like, bro. Like, how does it even get to that? How does it...
Von, who was L.A.'s friend. And Von and L.A. was so close that Von even went to jail one time wearing L.A.'s coat. And all of this goes back to the projects, a war that lasted a decade where only a handful of them are still alive today, and most of their families grew up together.
They tore the projects down, so everybody just scattered all over the place.
And now, in 2025, their
Damn.
generation is
Dead,
either all
dead,
adults with
prison.
children or dead.
Dead,
The younger
dead, prison,
generation
dead.
has no such ties with each other. And the inherited beef just goes on and on. When I was a kid, the older guys on my block would say F the other side, and they would influence everyone younger to say the same thing. But nobody explained why. Of course, if you weren't a follower, then this meant nothing to you. This wouldn't just make you a gang member. What would make you a gang member is when you actually saw the guys on the other side, and they would talk the same thing, and one of them is a follower, and maybe he even has a gun.
Chicago is a
You
crazy
see, people
city,
outside
bro.
the hood choose to believe that all of this is just a product of broken homes, and that's just not the case. My family is huge and loving, and so were a lot of people's families. But when me and my friends ran into the kids across the main street that did come from a broken home, and he had a gun, I mean, the police won't save you, so at some point you gotta stand on your own. When I was 12, I got smacked by a car in a hit and run, and when I got to the hospital, the police asked me what kind of car it was. I said I thought it was a black Buick, but I couldn't remember. Then the police told me, don't worry about it, we won't find it anyway. So, it doesn't
Damn,
matter if
bro.
you had a stable home,
We won't
because no
find it
matter where
anyway.
you are, there's always going to be a kid that didn't have a stable home. And if he tries to kill you, well, you can hide and call the police like you live in the suburbs, but they won't come. So you make your own decision on what you do. Like I said, these type of kids made up a small percentage of the hood, but all it takes is one. There have been kids that went from trading Pokemon cards to being shooters because they were pushed. And when it comes to kids with weapons, your parents can't save you. I know I wouldn't want my mom in the middle of anything I had going on. And once these migrations took away all the order and gangs, the older guys had no more power. You know, the ones that used to tell the kids to go in the house. They became afraid of the kids, and for good reason. And now, we are where we are today. Back then, the younger guys needed the older guys to supply them with weapons to defend themselves. But now, a kid just can get one from another kid, and then he can order a switch on the internet to turn a semi to a fully. I know y'all were on my ass in the last video because I said semi-automatic instead of fully. You know what I meant though. But it's a pretty simple trickle effect that was started by something that should have never even existed in the first place. If you look back in history, especially in Chicago, there was none of this gang violence in the black community until the projects got mixed with drug money. And when you go out of town, especially around Chicago...
Bro, whenever like dude makes these videos, like where do you... I'm wondering where he gets all these videos from, like these old videos of the old cop cars at Chicago. Like, where are people searching this shit up at?
This leads people that have never been to believe that gangs are still fighting over a turf or drugs or some fantasy like that. And this just comes from the projects, because you would have one whole building with huge money-making operations. And these operations would also involve murder and corrupt police officers taking their cut. But the project should have never existed in the first place, because it created something that was unsustainable. And once it fell apart, it was just chaos. The mafias were broken down, and all of the broken homes spread around the south side and the west side of Chicago. And today what we're seeing are the kids and grandkids of both the broken homes and the stable homes that had to jump in the streets to protect themselves. And that's where we at. Now, since we almost hit 100K, I've been thinking long and hard about doing a very long video for a 100K special. So let me know what you guys want to see. But thank y'all for watching, man. I love you guys. It is kind of therapeutic talking about my past in Chicago and just about Chicago, period. But thank you for the support, and I'll see y'all next time.
Yes, Sirski. Shout out Trap University. I ain't gonna lie. Homie's coming with some heat on the videos, bro. Shout out Trap University with the fire videos. Yeah. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I will tag Trap University down below. Go check them out, man. Out.